and rarely have I ever seen plus 208.5 passing yards for TJ Finley.
I mean, just watch it evaporate after 3 drives.
3 plays.
Cade McNamara and TJ Finley combined for the total number of yards that Bryce Young throws for.
That's a good bet.
Now that's a contest we need.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Happy Thanksgiving and welcome into Monkey Knife Fight's college football show. I'm Dan Watkins. Joining me, as always, is the great John McKechnie of Rotowire.com. John, it is the season of leftovers this week as we just kick into gorge yourself in fat mode for the rest of the year. Mm-hmm. So any leftovers from week 12 of college football?
Oh boy. Well, I don't know if there's anything to pick off the carcass that is Michigan State at this point, because I think that Ohio State went whole hog on them, and there might not be much left. Nick Whalen and I talked about it on Monday's Rotowire podcast. Like, that's the kind of loss that for however many games Michigan State made over the course of this season, that's going to put the stain on like kind of everything that they did this year.
Yeah. Did Mel Tucker sign that contract yet?
There was a lot of DocuSign tweets going on Saturday afternoon as Ohio State got out to like a 49-point lead at halftime. I was like, I hope that ink's dry because, they got a ways to go.
Yeah, I guess some good news out of that game is for LSU and LSU fans. You can take Mel Tucker off the list because he's not going to be able to help down in Baton Rouge.
Nope, I don't think so. So if you're a fan of the Bayou Bengals, you're fine with Mel Tucker staying up north.
Yep. And my big takeaway from week 12 is just give us Ohio State, Georgia. I really hope we get that in the national championship because that could be a very, very fun Monday night in the middle of January.
Yeah, that'd be incredible. I think the way the two match up against each other, where it's probably the most explosive offense in college football, that kind of taken the mantle from Bama last year or LSU the year before. But I'm talking, of course, about LSU or Ohio State going up against the best college defense that we've seen probably a decade. So I think that would just be an incredible matchup between the two. I don't know if the Georgia offense versus the Ohio State defense is quite as exciting, but yeah, that game would be determined by Ohio State's offense and what they can do against Georgia's D. That would be incredible to watch. And here's hoping that if they do match up, it would be for all the marbles, the actual final, as opposed to them being the 2-3 or something like that.
Yep, absolutely. So it is the last week in November. That means it's the last week of Chaos Month in college football. It's Rivalry Week. We have a lot to get to. And, John, as I was preparing for the show this week, with it being Thanksgiving, I got to thinking the Rivalry Week games in college football are very similar to the foods you'll probably see on your Thanksgiving table. Now, stick with me here, John. You can give me a grade at the end of this here, but I've been workshopping this for a few days now. Ohio State, Michigan is the turkey. All right. 2 words, the game, the bird. It's the star of the show. It's what everyone's talking about. It has the potential to be a little bland if 1 or 2 things go wrong, like, leaving the turkey in the oven too long, or Jim Harbaugh's track record in big games. You got the Iron Bowl, Bama, Auburn. That's your stuffing. It only comes around once a year. You forget how much you enjoy it until it's right in front of you. You can get a little crazy with it, like adding some sausage to your stuffing or returning a missed field goal for a touchdown as time expires to win the game. You got Oklahoma and Okie State. That's Bedlam. That's your mashed potatoes. It's always delicious, but the more scoring or the more butter, the better. And just like how Bedlam is used for other sports meetings between these two schools, mashed potatoes isn't exclusive to Thanksgiving either. Next, you have Wisconsin and Minnesota, the border battle. That's your green bean casserole. Green bean casserole, when you take it apart, you take apart those ingredients, the canned green beans, the cream of mushroom soup, a crispy onion topping. It's all kind of bland by themselves, but you combine them, it's a great product, which is just like these 2 football programs. Then you got the Egg Bowl, Ole Miss, Mississippi State. That's your appetizer. It's the first game of the weekend. You don't want to overdo it because you know what's coming up afterwards. And Thanksgiving apps, they have a real chance to be kind of hit or miss, just like this matchup over the years. You also have Notre Dame, Stanford. That's your bread or your rolls on your table. Is it exciting? No. Do you really need it? No, but you're going to consume it anyway. And finally, Florida State, Florida, that's your cranberry sauce. Cranberry sauce, I'm not a fan. Frankly, it disgusts me, just like these two football teams this year.
And I think, piggybacking on the cranberry sauce thing, there's two ways that you can really have it. The kind of authentic, it's served in a dish. That they actually do the work in the kitchen of making the sauce themselves, but it's still not great. So so even when it's good, it's not that good. And then other years, it's just literally you can see the ridges and outlines of the can that you just kind of dunked it out onto the table with. And either way, it's not great. So that rivalry, that's a less than the sum of its parts, as opposed to like a Wisconsin and Minnesota being greater than the sum of its parts with the green bean casserole comp. But Dan, phenomenal work all the way through on the rivalry Thanksgiving comps. I thoroughly enjoyed that.
Thank you very much. That's just the things I do for you guys here and everyone. So let's get to the games. Let's start off with the Egg Bowl Thursday night. The NFL's kind of got the Bills. They do have the Bills and the Saints going on. I think this game is going to be better than Buffalo and New Orleans in the NFL. You might want to turn your attention to this one. You got Ole Miss at Mississippi State. This game's in Starksville this year. And let's start off with the two quarterbacks. You got Will Rogers from Mississippi State. His more or less is 341.5 passing yards. And then you got Matt Corral on the other side, 288.5. So, John, kind of tell me what you expect out of these quarterbacks. Are we going to get a shootout here in Mississippi Thursday night?
I do believe that we are. I think that this sets up great on for both offenses. I think Miss State has the better defense between the two, but obviously you're asking a little bit less of Corral with that 288.5 number. But he seems to be back to full health. I think there was a lot of questions about how healthy he was basically after that Tennessee game, but he looks good now. He's starting to facilitate the ball around. Looked good against Vanderbilt, hard not to, but I'm in on Matt Corral in this particular situation. This is his last regular season game for the Rebs, having announced his declaration for the draft. And then on the other side, I know that Will Rogers tends to put up bigger numbers on the road. We talked about that going into his Auburn game a couple weeks ago, but this is a huge matchup. I think that we're going to see Ole Miss pushing the pace on the other side. Miss State's going to need to keep up with them, and it's all going to flow through Rogers. And 341 by his standards, as crazy as it sounds, that's not a particularly high mark to clear. And I don't think that Mississippi has a particularly great pass defense. So I think this sets up nicely for the more on both. I think we're going to get more than we bargained for as far as entertainment value here. Will it be better than Elijah Moore doing the dog celebration? I can't say that, but we're going to see some good stuff here.
Yeah, I really like the Will Rogers number this week. He's reached 342 passing yards in 9 of 11 games this season. Mm-hmm. So I don't really see any reason to go against him getting there, especially with his attempts. I mean, he hasn't attempted less than 39 passes in an SEC game this year. So I really like him this week as well. A couple of the skill position guys, John, for Ole Miss, you got Dontario Drummond, 75.5 receiving yards. He's reached 76 in 5 of 11 games, but his highest yardage in a road game this year is just 66 yards. I know you like Matt Corral. Is Drummond the guy for him to get to that number?
I'm encouraged by Drummond just based on the fact that he's starting to be more involved in the offense once again. Obviously got dinged up mid-season, wasn't available week 10, but it has come back strong, 18 targets in the last 2 weeks, including 10 targets last week. So I think as long as things continue to trend in that direction, I don't see why they wouldn't. I think this sets up nicely for Drummond to return a more in that particular circumstance. So give me the more on Drum.
And which Ole Miss running back do you like this week? You got Jerrion Ely, 67.5 is his more or less rushing yards, or Snoop Connor, 53.5 in this game. They're almost identical in carries this season, 105 for Ely, 107 for Connor. Who you got?
I think Ely's been their guy down the stretch. I think he's been the more impressive player down the stretch. I think he's the better player overall. I like Snoop Connor, and I think he has some utility down near the goal line, but that doesn't set him up for a ton of yardage. So I think Ely's their guy between the 20s, and I like the more. I like him to have more yards than Connor this week, and I like him to go more than his projected total.
All right, let's talk about the star of the show, and that's the game. Ohio State at Michigan at the Big House, noon kickoff Saturday. Everyone has been talking about this one for quite some time now because it seems like Michigan's finally going to be able to maybe, just maybe, beat Ohio State for the first time in the Harbaugh era. Let's talk about the quarterbacks here to start things off. You got C.J. Stroud, 329.5 is his more or less. He's reached that number in 6 of 10 games this season. He's averaging 347 yards per game. And we saw what he did in about a half in one drive, I think it was, against Michigan State, throwing for 432 yards that week. But Michigan, Big Brother's defense, much better than Little Brother. They're number 8 in the country, only allowing 178 yards per game. Can the Wolverines slow him down?
You know what? I think they can. I know that I was just gassing up the Ohio State passing attack and saying it's the best in the country. Still probably is. But this game is in Michigan. I was really curious to see what the line would look like this one from the betting angle. And I think 7.5 is a good amount of respect to Michigan. And I think it's an indication that this one is going to be close and it's going to be lower scoring than what we've seen of late, especially from the Ohio State side of things. So Michigan, they got those game records up front. Stroud, not actually all that mobile. So if he can't get away from Aiden Hutchinson, that could be a serious problem here. So I'm going to take the less, which, as crazy as it sounds, as well as Stroud has been playing of late, he's, obviously pushed himself into Heisman finalist contention here. I think Michigan keeps a lid on him at least a little bit. I mean, you got a lot of cushion with 329, and I don't think Michigan's given up more than 300 yards through the air in any game this season. The highest, I believe, is 293 all the way back in week 2.
Is there a number for Stroud that if that does drop by Saturday that you'd be more comfortable with to go more?
I think we're looking at 309.5. I think is probably where I start to defer a little bit more to Stroud. And obviously that this could look foolish. I mean, Stroud has so many great receiving weapons, but I just think that Michigan's defense deserves the respect that it's earned.
I'm really hoping that the CJ Stroud and the Ohio people go after you like they went after me on Saturday. All I did was tweet out Bryce Young's box score. And I said, Bryce Young said, saw CJ Stroud's line and said, hold my beer. And they just come out of the woodwork saying, are you an idiot? Like Stroud only played a half. Like, all right, guys, like just chill. Okay.
Yeah.
Bryce Young threw for 500 and something yards, the most ever in Alabama school history. So let's just calm down just a little bit. Cade McNamara, Michigan's quarterback, 188.5. He's reached 189 in 6 of 11 games. He's really come on the past few weeks here as they're kind of letting him loose a little bit. Is that going to happen again against Ohio?
I think yes. I would take the more when it comes to McNamara. He's looked good, especially these last 3 weeks. He obviously threw all over Michigan State, looked pretty efficient against Penn State and took care of business this past weekend against Maryland as well. I am a little bit confused as to how he got some of that production this past weekend. 170 of his passing yards were to a running back. So that's obviously not going to be sustainable against Ohio State. He's going to have to get, Mike Sanders-Still and Andrew Anthony a little bit more involved this week. Michigan kind of got away with doing whatever they wanted against Maryland. They're going to have a little bit more of a streamlined game plan, a little bit more focused one way or the other. But I do believe that McNamara is going to need to throw the ball a little bit more than what we've seen. And I think that he's shown over the last few weeks that he's capable of getting it done when he's asked to. I don't think that was the case earlier in the season, but I do think it is now.
All right. And then you got Hassan Haskins in that Michigan backfield, 90.5 rushing yards. This is more or less. He's reached 91 in 4 of 6 games this year. And these past 3 games for Michigan, Blake Corum hasn't played, or I think he had 1 carry before he got hurt with that high ankle sprain. And Haskins is averaging 134 yards per game in those contests. Ohio, though, they rank 11th against the run, giving up just 102 yards a game, and they just held Kenneth Walker to 25 last week. Obviously, Michigan State had to completely abandon the run by 5 minutes into the game. But and there's reports out as well that Blake Corum could play this weekend. So what do you think out of Haskins? I'm kind of all that information. I'm kind of going less here.
I'm with you there. I think you laid out a great case. I think a Corum return. I think Michigan's been circling this as the week to get him back. He made the trip to Maryland last week, which is a good sign. Teams can't just kind of willy-nilly bring all their guys on their travel roster. So that does seem to suggest that he's getting close. I think he will be available. So we'll see a little bit less carries for Haskins this week. And Donovan Edwards, again, looked really good as a pass catcher out of the backfield. He can do that a little bit better than Haskins can. So this sets up poorly for Haskins, I believe, this week, in addition to the fact that, if Michigan is playing from behind here, then they're not going to be able to just simply stick to running it between the tackles with him and playing bully ball like they did against Maryland, Penn State, Indiana, those last few teams. So I'm taking less.
And quickly here, Trayon Henderson, 93.5 is his more or less. What do you think of him this weekend?
Yeah, Michigan, really tough defensively, but I just can't bring myself to bet against TreVeyon Henderson. I think TreVeyon Henderson would be like a top 15 running back in the NFL today.
Wow,
like
as a freshman.
As a freshman. As a grown man, as a freshman from Hopewell, Virginia. Incredible.
I like it. I love it. All right. Multiple choice time, John. The Ohio State wide receiver that will have a monster game this week is A, Chris Olave, B, Garrett Wilson, C, Jackson Smith and Jigba, or D, all of the above.
I think it's Olave. I think Olave, he finishes, what's been kind of like a legendary Ohio State career for him. I think he has the all-time touchdown record. I think he just beat David Boston, I want to say, that this past weekend. There's a name drop. Whalen would love that one. And then I think Wilson's the most talented of that group, but there's something about this game where it's about the sand, and I think Olave has the sand, and I think he's going to have the big game of this three.
All right. Anytime you can bring up Arizona Cardinal and San Diego Charger legend David Boston is a good day in my book. So let's move on. Let's go to the Iron Bowl here. Alabama at Auburn. Thoughts and prayers to our guy Bo Nix as he continues his recovery. We wish Bo all the best as hopefully we see him next year on the Plains in Auburn. And speaking of the Plains, Alabama has not won at Jackson Hare since 2015. Can Bryce Young and co stop that streak this weekend? Let's build a nice little 4x4 here for this one, John, and get right into the Iron Bowl. Let's start with the quarterbacks. Bryce Young, 333.5. He's hit that number in 5 of 11 games this year. Auburn's pass defense kind of shaky. They're 78th in the country. Are you sticking with Bryce Young and riding the hot hand?
I am. He's playing his best ball right now. He keeps getting better. Just unbelievable poise on that guy. And I think the big thing that you can sabotage Bama with is a really good pass rush. I don't think Auburn has that. So we're going to see Young with time to operate. And I think he just kind of shreds Auburn. So really it's a question of, do they pump the brakes at any point in the second half? And Iron Bowl is not for brake pumping.
All right. And then you have not Bo Nix playing quarterback for Auburn this weekend. It's TJ Finley. 125.5 is his more or less. Last week for South Carolina, 17 of 32 finishing with 188 yards. I mean, this number is just so low. I feel like I got to go with the more. How do you feel?
Yeah, I think I checked earlier and it was like closer to 150, or maybe I'm just making that up. But
it dropped 20 yards. Since
it has been precipitously dropping and with good reason, but that clearly the money was all coming in on the less than 155. 125 though, I mean, you can luck your way into that if you just play the whole game. So as long as Finley's out there, and Finley obviously not good, but he did start some games for LSU last year, did get his first start under his belt of 2021 last weekend. In South Carolina, obviously wasn't great, but this isn't quite the Bama defense we've seen in recent years, and that number's so low. So I'll take less.
All right, you got Jameson Williams. Jameson Williams, Alabama's stud wide receiver, one of the two studs with John Mechie. 110.5 is his receiving yard total. If we're going all in on Bryce Young, do we have to go all in on Jameson as well?
I think so. I think he's more of the big play guy, and again, I think it's a pretty narrow target tree that Bama has. You see a lot of targets go to Williams and Mechie. Everyone else is pretty, lightly involved. So it really does flow through those two. And when it's flowing through Williams, the way that he has that big play ability, we saw it a week ago against Arkansas. We've seen it time and time again this year. Couldn't cut it at Ohio State, so he had to go to Bama. He's doing pretty well. So I would like the more than 110.
It would be truly amazing if that was wide receiver 4 at Ohio State this year. I mean, that's just talk about spoiled. That would have been the Buckeyes, which they already are with their three-headed monster at receiver. Last guy on this 4x4, Tanks Bigsby, 89.5. He's reached 90 yards in 5 of 11 games. I'm not liking it too much this weekend against the number 5 run defense in the country of Alabama. How do you feel?
Yeah, I don't like it either. I think this is a less. I think that Bama goes into this game knowing that there's only one way that Auburn has a pulse here, and it's by getting the run going. And they're just going to take Bigsby. I mean, he's going to be getting dropped behind the line left and right. It's not going to go well for Tank this week, unfortunately.
All right. And last up, he's not on this 4x4, but any thoughts on Brian Robinson Jr.? 89.5 is his more or less.
That's a tricky one, but they just don't have a lot of backfield depth. So I think he gets most of it. Bama gets out to a big lead in the second half. They just kind of ride him the rest of the way. And I just don't think that Auburn has a great front seven necessarily. They're going to get tired over the course of this one. So I would like the more for Robinson there.
All right.
I want to point out one very funny thing. In our rapid fire contest, you have lines similar to like a spread line. It's just to do with the stats. And rarely have I ever seen plus 208.5 passing yards for TJ Finley.
I mean, just watch it evaporate after 3 drives.
3 plays.
Cade McNamara and TJ Finley combined for the total number of yards that Bryce Young throws for.
That's a good bet.
No, that's a contest we need.
A good contest.
It's not bad, right? Okay, let's get a little crazy here. Let's talk about Bedlam. Saturday night in Oklahoma at Oklahoma State. This game in Stillwater, 7:30 kickoff. This game is usually nuts, and that's what I'm expecting it as well. This year as well. Caleb Williams, 185.5, Oklahoma's quarterback. He's reached that number just 3 of 6 starts this season. Okie State's top 10 in pass defense. And what has happened to Oklahoma? I mean, every week we kind of talk about this, but still, it just still continues to amaze me just how pathetic their pass offense has been this year. I mean, Caleb Williams, the past 2 weeks, this is total 2 games for Caleb Williams, 17 completions on 36 attempts for just 229 yards. John, can he get to 186 on Saturday night?
I don't like the chances of it. I'm going to go with less here. I think that this is a you talked about how he struggled the last 2 weeks. This is the toughest matchup of them all. So either this is a bucking of the trend, or it's a continuation. And I think this one being in Stillwater against an Oklahoma State defense that really is among the best in the country. And, Caleb Williams, just a true freshman going on the road. This game has so much significance. I think that he ends up probably falling a little bit short here. So I'm going to take the less than 185. He can obviously get it done with his legs here. We saw the 70-yard touchdown run a week ago, but we're talking about his passing yards. And I just doesn't feel like that passing game is particularly healthy right now. So I'm taking less.
Yep. And then you got Spencer Sanders on the other side, 202.5. He's reached 203 passing yards, just 4 of 10 games, but he faces an Oklahoma defense that ranks 109th in the nation, giving up about 262 yards per game. How do you feel? I kind of want to go more here.
The more definitely makes sense. It's such a low number, and Oklahoma is not particularly good against the pass, like you said. But I can't trust Spencer Sanders with anything. He does more time and time again, more often than not. He makes plays, especially for a guy as experienced as he is, that just make you scratch your head. They don't have that stud receiver at Oklahoma State, not this year. So they don't really have that guy that can really shift things to putting him in position to hitting them more here on just one play. I got to go less.
All right, and let's quickly do a little rapid fire here with these running backs. Kennedy Brooks, 65.5 more or less. He's reached 66 yards in 7 of 11 games. Can he get there for the 8th time this season?
I think he does. That's a low enough number to where I'm in on Brooks this week. I think that Oklahoma goes with a run-heavy approach here, even though Oklahoma State really good against the run. I think that they try to take the pressure off Williams, do it through Brooks. When they give it to Brooks, good things happen. So I'll take the more.
And last up, Jalen Warren, our guy from earlier on this year, 84.5 rushing yards. He's a little banged up, but Mike Gundy says he should be good to go Saturday night. He's really struggled as of late. He's only gotten to 85 yards, 5 of 11 games this season, which seems crazy after the start he had where he was over 120 just about every week.
Right. So I do wonder if the fact that he's a little bit banged up, a little bit struggling of late, and maybe some of those other Oklahoma State running backs starting to get a little bit healthier. He was really just the only healthy guy. That's why he was having so much production earlier this season. So even though the matchup's good, I wonder if they go with a more deep rotation this week. I'll take the less for Warren here.
Okay, it's that time again. Let's run a little no huddle 2-minute drill. Let's actually, you know what? Let's do it in 90 seconds this week. We'll run our hurry up offense. John, you ready?
Ready.
All right, let's start off. Kenneth Walker against Penn State, 110.5 rushing yards, more or less.
Less.
Okay, Gary Bohannon, 202.5 passing yards, taking on Texas Tech this week.
Give me the more on Bohannon. I think that this sets up well against Texas Tech's defense. They're nothing special.
Notre Dame's quarterback Jack Cohn, 229.5 on the road in Stanford Saturday, more or less.
I'll go with more. I know that they've had some attrition in the passing game, but I think this sets up pretty nicely for him. Michael Meyer, Kevin Austin, they should be able to get it done for Cohn. Cohn's actually sneakily played pretty well late.
All right. Don't get me excited. All
I'm
right.
sorry.
Zamir White, John, your guy, 68.5 rushing yards, taking on a pathetic Georgia Tech defense.
Yeah, he needs 8, maybe 10 carries to get this. I think he gets there. So I don't think we're going to see a lot of him in the second half, but we're going to see him hit this number. So give me more.
All right. A couple Pac-12 guys to end here. Anthony Brown, Oregon's quarterback, 218.5 passing yards, taking on Oregon State, more or less.
Less. This one's at Autzen, but I think Oregon last weekend was soul cleaving for them. And I think this is a rivalry game. I don't think it goes well for him.
And last up, our new guy, Jackson Dart, 231.5, more or less passing yards for Dart this weekend.
Oh, he's got to put the eye black on both sides. Just the one, and then you struggle, doesn't look good. But I'll take the more. I think that USC just throws it so much that he'll end up with that number, even if they lose.
Very good.
Like 1 minute and like 43 seconds. You got John, you want 16 seconds? Say whatever you want, by all means.
Oh, I don't know if I have much else to add. I mean, I was intentionally curt on the Kenneth Walker thing just because I just think that Michigan State's toast. I think the carcass has been picked.
All right. Very good. Very good. John, your pick of the century for rivalry week.
Give me Talia. Whatever his total is going up against Rutgers in a game. I'm trying to, Maryland and Rutgers are the two teams that are the new additions, not so new anymore, additions to the Big Ten. They obviously play on Rivalry Weekend every year, but there isn't a real Big Ten trophy for them the way that there are for these other ones. So I've been lobbying for some sort of trophy for this too. I think when Maryland and Rutgers play each other, it should be for like the bronze urinal cake. I think that would be befitting of where those two are in the Big Ten football pecking order. And I think that this particular week, I know that Talia didn't do particularly well against Michigan, but did throw for over 350 yards in like 3 straight games before then. I think he's going to get back in action this week against Rutgers.
Love it. Very good. Very good. All right, John, where can they follow you?
You can find me on Twitter at Johns_tailgate. You can also find the Rotowire College Football Podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts. And if you go to rotowire.com/cfootball, that's where all the college football goodness is that I'm in charge of over at rotowire.com.
Love it. And you guys can find me at Dan Watkins Radio. Thank you very much for watching. Happy Thanksgiving and enjoy Rivalry Week. We'll talk to you next week for Championship Saturday.